Let's talk about one of the strangest, most memorable war films of the 1970s. A movie that mashed up World War II combat, counterculture attitude, and a good old-fashioned bank heist. Kelly's Heroes, released in 1970, is a film that defies genre expectations. Is it a war movie, a satire, a comedy, a caper film in combat boots? The answer is yes, to all of it. Directed by Brian G. Hutton and starring a powerhouse cast led by Clint Eastwood, Donald Sutherland, Telly Savalas, and Don Rickles, Kelly's Heroes is a bold, weird, and often brilliant film that uses the backdrop of war not just to tell a story of survival or sacrifice, but to make a very pointed and very 1970s commentary on authority, greed, and individualism. Let's dig into why Kelly's Heroes still holds up, why it matters, and what makes it one of the most unconventional war films ever produced by Hollywood. The basic premise is simple on the surface, but layered underneath. Private Kelly, played with cool stoicism by Clint Eastwood, is a former officer who's been demoted and is stuck in the mud of the Western Front in France in 1944. During a brief mission behind enemy lines, he accidentally captures a German officer who, under the influence of alcohol and some manipulation, reveals that there's a stash of Nazi gold, 14,000 gold bars to be exact, hidden in a bank behind enemy lines in the town of Clermont. And just like that, Kelly gets an idea. Forget the orders. Forget the war. Let's go rob that bank. To do that, he needs a crew. Enter Sergeant Big Joe, played by Telly Savalas, who is reluctant but eventually persuaded. Then there's Crap Game, a cynical supply sergeant played by Don Rickles, and the film's most memorable figure, Oddball, a tank commander with a groovy hippie vibe played by Donald Sutherland. The team grows from a small band of renegades into a rogue unit that punches through German defenses, all under the noses of clueless American commanders who think it's a heroic push toward military victory. It's a war film structured like Ocean's 11, but with tanks, machine guns, and Nazi gold. Kelly's Heroes came out during the Vietnam War, and it shows. Even though it's set during World War II, the tone is pure 1970s anti-establishment. This isn't about saving the world from fascism or glorifying sacrifice. It's about regular guys fed up with a system that doesn't care about them, taking matters into their own hands. The film mixes absurdist comedy with gritty combat scenes. One moment you're watching a tank barrel explode into a German machine gun nest, and the next, you're hearing Donald Sutherland's Oddball talk about negative waves and serenity. The tonal shifts are jarring to some, but to others, they're part of the film's charm. It reflects the chaos and contradiction of war itself. Rather than the flag-waving heroism seen in earlier World War II films like The Longest Day or Battle of the Bulge, Kelly's Heroes takes a cue from the disillusionment of the late 60s and early 70s. The soldiers aren't patriots, they're opportunists. They don't hate the enemy. In fact, they barely even mention politics. It's all about the gold, and the way each man interprets the mission reveals their true motivations. Clint Eastwood plays Kelly almost like the man with no name with dog tags. He's quiet, confident, and driven by a personal mission. Unlike his spaghetti western roles, though, there's more moral ambiguity here. He's not exactly a hero. He's a disgraced officer using war as a cover for robbery, but you root for him anyway. Telly Savalas as Big Joe gives one of the most grounded performances. He's gruff and practical, the guy who knows the war is a mess but still tries to keep his men alive. He becomes the heart of the group, reluctantly going along with the plan because deep down he knows there's no other way out. Then there's Don Rickles' Crap Game. His scenes are some of the funniest in the movie. Rickles plays a classic war profiteer, always hustling, always cutting deals, and always covering his own rear. It's a role that fits perfectly into the film's larger satire of military bureaucracy. But the real show stealer is Donald Sutherland as Oddball. Imagine a World War II tank commander who sounds like a Haight-Ashbury dropout. He's got long hair, a weird smile, and delivers every line with the laid-back cadence of someone who's clearly on a different wavelength. His tank crew blasts music from loudspeakers and uses paint shells to confuse the enemy. He's a comic relief character, yes, but he also represents something deeper, the rejection of conventional thinking, the absurdity of war, and maybe even a hint of psychedelic rebellion. Together, this ensemble gives the film its energy. It's not just about the heist. It's about how all these different personalities collide under extreme circumstances. Director Brian G. Hutton had already worked with Eastwood on Where Eagles Dare, but Kelly's Heroes is a completely different beast. Hutton blends action, comedy, and satire with surprising effectiveness. The battle scenes are gritty and violent, shot with realism that contrasts sharply with the film's comedic and countercultural elements. Shot largely in Yugoslavia, the production benefited from access to actual Y-era equipment and tanks, giving the film an authenticity in its visuals. The bombed-out towns, muddy roads, and chaotic battlefields all feel tactile and immersive. But Hutton's direction is also playful. He allows scenes to linger. He gives the actors space to riff and improvise. And he's not afraid to insert strange, surreal moments, like the standoff at the bank that's staged like a spaghetti western duel, complete with Ennio Morricone-inspired music. In fact, Lalo Schifrin's score deserves special mention. It plays with genre conventions, sometimes evoking traditional war themes, sometimes leaning into Western or jazz influences, and occasionally going completely off the rails. The music underlines just how intentionally strange and genre-bending this film is. At its core, Kelly's Heroes is a war movie that's not really about war. It's about frustration, absurdity, and the lengths people will go to carve out meaning or profit in a meaningless situation. The American officers are portrayed as buffoons or opportunists. Carroll O'Connor plays General Colt, who thinks Kelly's rogue unit is a brilliant flanking maneuver and uses it to make himself look good. The irony is that he rewards their insubordination with medals, completely unaware they were chasing gold. The film questions authority without being preachy. It suggests that the real enemy isn't necessarily the Germans but the system itself, a system that sends men to die while others sit back and reap the rewards. That message hit hard in 1970, during the height of public skepticism about Vietnam, and it still resonates today. There's also something deeply cynical but honest about the idea that the soldiers only find real motivation once profit is on the line. Not ideology, not orders, but gold, and yet there's a weird optimism underneath. These guys form a team, they get it done. They outwit both their own commanders and the enemy. They represent the little guy winning, even in a system rigged against them. Kelly's Heroes didn't receive overwhelming critical praise on release, but it has since grown into a cult classic. For fans of war films, it offers something refreshingly different. It paved the way for other genre mashup war films like MASH, Three Kings, and even parts of Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds. It showed that war stories didn't always have to be solemn or tragic. Sometimes they could be chaotic, irreverent, and fun, without losing their bite. Donald Sutherland's oddball became an iconic character, and lines like "Stop with the negative waves" became pop culture staples. The film's attitude, part counterculture, part Western, part war movie, made it a favorite among both older veterans and younger audiences, disillusioned with traditional narratives. There's even a case to be made that Kelly's Heroes anticipated the anti-hero craze decades before it went mainstream. Kelly and his crew are selfish, insubordinate, and morally ambiguous, but they're compelling. They reflect the real complexity of people caught in war, rather than idealized versions of soldiers. Kelly's Heroes is one of those films that doesn't fit neatly into any box. It's a war movie that's not really about war, a heist film set in a battlefield, a satire dressed as an action comedy. It's funny, violent, smart, and subversive, sometimes all in the same scene. The performances are strong across the board, the visuals are immersive, and the script strikes a balance between humor and critique that's still relevant decades later. It's a movie that dares to be weird and makes it work. If you've never seen it, you owe it to yourself to watch it, not just as a piece of war cinema, but as a cultural artifact of its time. It's what happens when Clint Eastwood, Donald Sutherland, and a tank full of hippies decide to rob a Nazi bank. Kelly's Heroes is more than just a movie about stealing gold. It's a snapshot of rebellion, camaraderie, and the strange morality of wartime survival. And for all its oddness, it might just be one of the most honest war movies ever made.